Hi there, it's Tamara Payne coming to you from Aloha Wellness in Lenexa, Kansas. And today I am so honored and blessed to get to introduce you to one of my closest humans, my friend, my sister, my tribe, my associate, Elizabeth Goebel, who's also known today as Willie, her husband.
Yes, Elizabeth Goebel Willie. Hello, everyone.
And is it okay that I call you Liz in our interview and our time together today?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Liz.
Yes.
So I want the world to know you because I know you and love you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to get a little bit teary here because you are the second of my interviews because you are simply the most unconditionally loving human being I've ever met.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. So share with us, share with me, share with our audience today how you got to that space, how you learned that, whatever you'd like to know. And what is unconditional love to you?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Tamara, and thank you so much for interviewing me and for being one of my most loving unconditional friends as well to start. So thank you. I honor you. Um, Unconditional love. So I was thinking about this a lot the past few weeks. And a lot of things went through my head. My first thought, which is usually the right thought, right, was your parents. That's who taught you unconditional love. And then I veered from that a little bit just for a little while because my parents birthed me into this world at this time and space, right? They have never gotten me. That does not mean they're bad people. They are actually lovely people. You know my mom and they're so wonderful. And I started thinking a little bit and I was like, well, if they don't get me, do they really unconditionally love me? And have they shown me that? And the more I thought in it, the more the answer was a resounding yes. Here's why. Even though I was a very troubled teenager who had many and a myriad of issues, and even though I consistently make decisions, and I say make because it still happens, that they don't get or understand, they still love me. They still show me love. They still help me and are there for me whenever I need them. And they've always done that looking back, you know. I'm much different than they are. I'm a totally different generation. I'm a totally different type of human. However, no matter what, they have always just shown me love. Oh my gosh, they tell me all the time how much they love me and how beautiful they think I am. And they do this with my sister and I and their grandchildren. No matter what, they shower us in love and giving. And they always want to spend time with us. And they always, even if we're talking about things they cannot even imagine and begin to understand. They just love us. So what I realized is that is exactly what unconditional love is. Okay, it doesn't always mean agreeing with someone, seeing things exactly like they see things. It doesn't even mean you have to completely get someone, but it's showing up for them anyway. And so they mirrored that for me in so many ways. So
That what an amazing answer to our first question. And it segues me a little bit from our content, and that is so you've met my husband Sarge, and you know that he's also a very unconditionally loving human and parent
yes,
from the background of drill sergeant, military, US Army,
right.
very different style, very loud, big human being.
Yep.
And one thing that he teaches me as a step parent, and as he's a biologic parent to our five children, is he always asks of the kids especially, I do not agree with me, or I do not agree with you, but do you want my opinion?
Oh, that is a beautiful statement.
Right? And so then that gives them one opportunity for them to say, yes or no, dad, I want your opinion or not.
Mhm.
And then he backs out of the situation and has said his piece only one time. And so, isn't that a loving, neat way for us to model the next generation, And
Yeah.
today we actually have our sixth grandbaby coming into the planet being induced today.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. That's amazing.
It's amazing. I never knew I'd be a grandparent just because I married grandpa.
Yeah.
And so you amazing humans, and you have three amazing humans of your own.
Yeah.
And so, would you please then share with me a part of the story that is part of what led you and I to one another? And that is, would you share with us and our audience about what it was like when your middle son had a vaccine injury? And take us through that story, if you
Yes.
would.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to share with you guys. So my middle son was born in 2009, a big old boy, almost 10 pounds, just a big guy, right? Healthy, beautiful. Actually, my easiest birth, which is funny because he was huge. Um, just perfect and beautiful, born in the hospital. Um, a few days later, though, that changed. He started having, well, I guess it was about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, was the first time looking back that he was vaccine injured. So he had shots in the hospital, vitamin K, and a few others. And I didn't know better then because you do better once you know better, right? So we took him home, and I noticed he just, something was off. Something was off in his eyes right away, right off the bat. And then his breathing started getting labored and more labored and more labored. And so finally, we took him into Children's Mercy, and they had to hold my sweet little baby down on a table and stick tubes down him and deep suction liquid, this thick fluid out of his lungs. And it was horrendous. I mean, his dad and I were, I don't know, I think we were both in shock. Like, this little baby who is just home from the hospital, who's not gone anywhere. I mean, he's little. He was just a little guy, and that was terrifying. And unfortunately, that was the first of many different medical interventions. He had tubes by the time he was 6 months old. He had to undergo surgery for tubes. He was on 14 antibiotics before he was 6 months old, Tamara. I mean, can you even imagine the shock to his system and his immune system? And and it was so flummoxing to me, right? Because I'm doing everything my pediatrician is telling me to do. We're going to all these well visits. We're getting all these vaccines. And every time he gets a vaccine, and at the time, I just didn't put it together until later. He'd get a vaccine, horrible ear infections, break out in a rash. His skin was always covered in eczema. He was miserable. We were miserable. I was terrified that he was just going to die in the night. Um, I just did everything I could for him. I would sleep right by his bed, and I would put his mattress up so the fluid can drain out of his head while he was sleeping. It was awful. It was just, whew, I've had to work through a lot of that trauma, which I'll talk about in a little while. But then finally, he was 4 years old, and I took him to the pediatrician's office. He's sick. He was diagnosed with asthma before he was 1, which is almost unheard of. But he could never breathe. You know, his poor little body was poisoned and inflamed. So anyway, 4 years old, we go to the pediatrician's office, and she says, I think it's okay. He was sick at the time, mind you, not feeling very well. But she said, I think it's okay. We're going to go ahead and do his kindergarten shots early and give him this flu shot. And I was like, something kind of started dinging for me a little bit at that time, but I ignored it. And I said, oh, okay, if that's what you think is best, doctor, who gets paid to vaccinate children, we'll do that. Let's do that. So they did that. And right afterwards, he started having right after those laundry list of vaccines, because they bring out 3 needles, there are multiple vaccines in that needle. So I don't remember how many shots he got that day on top of the flu shot, but it was a lot. So we come home. He's not feeling very good. His tummy's hurting. He just would sit and grab his tummy and, rock back and forth. And then about a week later, he starts running in circles and screaming that his tummy hurts and flapping his hands. Flap. It's called stemming. They're neurologically, something really bad is going on, and it's showing up in their muscle movements, is what was happening. We call that stemming in kids. And I was at daycare one day finally, and he's running around his cot, just crying, flapping his arms. My tummy hurts. I don't feel good. I don't feel good. I was his teacher at daycare at that time. And so I finally called my director back and I said, I have to go home. Like, something is very wrong and I don't know what. So we gather our stuff, get ready to go home. We go outside and he throws up quite a bit. Finally, and all this time complaining of a stomach ache. This is the first time he finally threw up. This is 2-3 weeks after his vaccine. I'm like, oh, great. He has the stomach flu. I was like almost relieved, right? So he probably purged some of the poison that way finally. And then he started having some runny stools. So we get home. I think he has the stomach flu. Mind you, he's never run a fever. This whole time, he's just acted strangely and his tummy hurts. So we come home and I do all the thing a mom does for their sick baby, cuddling with him and loving on him. And I set him in the living room so he could watch television while I made dinner. I have an older son too. So I'm like, okay, it's time to make dinner and he's feeling better. So I sit him in front of the television and I'm going to make dinner. I'm in there making dinner and I called out to him and I said, I'm just going to share his name. It's in the book anyway. I said, Brayden, do you want some macaroni and cheese or something along those lines? And I hear nothing. I'm like, well, he's probably just into the movie, So I said a little louder, hey, B, we call him B. Bud, what are you hungry? Would you like me to cook you something while I'm in here making dinner? Nothing. I'm like, oh, geez, he's just not answering me. So I go in and he is staring at the television blankly. Just, there's nothing there. There doesn't appear to be anything in his face. So I thought, well, he looks a little weird. So I went over and got in front of him and grabbed his face. And I said, Brayden. And he just tried to talk, but it just came out as a jargle. And he couldn't track, he couldn't move his eyes. He couldn't walk, we discovered. So I freak out. I don't know where Willie was, but I call Seth upstairs and I'm like, Seth, we have to go right now. My mom alarm is going crazy. At the time, I'm like, right?
Older son. Seth is your older son.
Yeah, Seth is my older son. And I called him up and I didn't know yet B couldn't walk. So I said, B, come on, we have to go. We have to go. And he would try to turn his head and look at me and his eyes would kind of stay over here. It was the scariest. It was horrible. There was nothing there. He was not in there. He couldn't walk. He couldn't get up. He couldn't move off the couch. So Seth scooped him up and finally Willie must have been outside. Willie came back in and we just threw Brayden in the car and we drove to the nearest hospital, which is Shawnee Mission Medical Center here in Kansas. I live in Shawnee. As we're driving there, he could kind of try to get words out at first when we put him in the car. And as we're driving there, he started slumping back and he could no longer sit. And then his eyes kind of started doing something not good and he lost all ability to speak. So I remember we got there, we throw the car into park in front of the emergency room. Seth got him out, ran him inside because he couldn't walk. So he was just holding him like this in his arms. Ran him inside. I don't remember parking the car. I don't remember what we did with the car. And the nurse at the desk takes one look at us and slams the button and takes us right back. And we get back into a room and we had no idea what was going on or why this was happening. So they were like, what did he take? No, I have no idea. I mean, and then at that time I thought, well, maybe he did take something, maybe he got a hold of something. And then they're starting to try to figure out what's wrong with him, looking in his eyes, listening to his heart, which is beating. And then he finally goes into a full-blown seizure. And so they intubate him. And I didn't know, I had no idea what was going to happen. And so they kind of had us get out of the room. They intubated him. And some of this I kind of don't remember. But I know that they had the chaplain come out and talk to me. And they called Children's Mercy and had them come down to get him because they were going to transfer him to Children's Mercy. They had a doctor, wonderful. He was such a nice man, come out. And I, of course, was asking, what's wrong with him? What's going on? And they're like, we don't know. And I said, is he going to live? And they said, we don't know. So at that time, sorry. Whew.
I'm gonna take a pause just to help people understand. First of all, this is very, very traumatic, and I'm very honored and grateful for you for your authentic, completely unscripted. I mean, we wrote the questions down here, ladies and gentlemen, but that's it. I was vaccine injured as a little girl in the 1980s, and I began to have a seizure disorder that lasted for about 30 years. In my career that's lasted about 20 some odd years, 2 decades, for the first decade, I was in Southern California in Los Angeles, and I worked on anywhere between 10 and 14,000 clients in holistic, in energy work, in massage therapy. And during that time frame, 5 of my clients came to me because their children had autism spectrum disorder. 5 out of those 15,000, 10,000,
Yeah.
whatever statistic you want to go to. Then, when I spent 10 years in Kansas City area, that statistic changed. Again, I'm not a statistician. I didn't
Right.
do very well in college statistics, by the way. So that's
Yes,
why
that applies to statistics as well. So
I didn't become a traditional physician because of that lack of statistician that's in me. So the caveat, buyer beware about that. But by the time I left Kansas City and moved just recently to Utila, Honduras, I saw approximately 1 in 6 to maybe 1 in 10 of my 4,000 clients with children with either autism spectrum or vaccine injury. So something's happening. That doesn't mean that anybody is at fault or to blame, except that we need to educate ourselves as the advocates for the next generation.
absolutely.
And so that is why I needed you, because we all need you to share. Now, we do not wish this story on any mother, on any
Oh,
grandparent, on any auntie, on any uncle, on anybody in this world, but this is your truth. This is your family's truth.
yeah.
And so when you're ready, please continue to share.
Oh, thank you so much for that. That was very helpful. Okay. So, but he didn't die. So, right. So there's a happy ending here. Some babies do. He didn't. Right. That's true. So Children's Mercy comes because what you don't realize when you take your child to regular hospitals, they don't always have the right tubes and things to use. So they call Children's Mercy, who was wonderful, got there very quickly, re-intubated him, which I did not choose to watch all of. By that time, my sister's there, my mom's there, everybody's there. We're all just like, what in the world is going to happen? But he's alive. He's in the ambulance, and we're headed to Children's Mercy, who really was wonderful. So we get there, and they decided to put him into basically a medically induced coma, at least overnight. And then the plan is the next morning, so his dad gets there. His dad and I are divorced, so his dad gets there. We're with him in the room all night long. We stayed with him and just watched our little baby. I mean, he was hooked up to all the stuff, but some people that's so traumatic to see. But for me, he was alive. That's how he was breathing. Like that did not, I was like, oh, keep him hooked up. I was really scared for the morning, but I was praying. And his dad and I both were praying, and we had a lot of people praying for him. And that next morning, a doctor came in. They did all this blood work. They're like, basically, this is very interesting. He had the only thing they could find in his blood work, and this is a pretty big stretch, was that he had coronavirus at the time. I told you he was sick when they vaccinated him. He had a coronavirus. And now looking back on that, I find that very interesting, right? With what's going on in the world. So he had one of the coronaviruses, which is a common cold. Um, and they vaccinated him anyway because they knew he was sick, but they didn't know what he had. So they're like, well, maybe it was that. Maybe it was just like seizures from the virus he has, or they were just stretching. They didn't know. They're not trained to recognize vaccine injury. It's not their fault. They just aren't. So we're in the hospital. So the next morning they take the tubes out, get all the medicine out of the system, and this beautiful boy just opens his eyes and looks at us. He can breathe. He is fine. He appears to be totally fine. He's talking again. He talks to us. He's like, Mom, Dad, Braden, he's like, doesn't really love attention. So he was like, oh my God, where am I? What's going on? He doesn't and still doesn't remember any of that, which I think is a huge blessing. He just woke up in the hospital and then wanted his macaroni and cheese, which I thought was very interesting from the night before when I had asked him. He's like, I'm hungry. Where's my food? So his dad and I are like, oh my gosh. And
the sweetest words a parent can hear after this life and death.
Yes. I was like, baby, if come hell or high water, I'm getting you some macaroni and cheese, So they run a myriad of tests after that. They do scans. They do everything a hospital can do. We were there for 4 days. They kept him to monitor him. In that 4 days, he had 2 very, very small leftover seizures, both while he was being tested, which is really interesting. I'll have to look back. I can't remember exactly what test they did, but to look at his brain activity, he had one while they were doing that. Really small, just really small. So after 4 days, they say that he has benign childhood epilepsy. Now think about what this is called. Benign. We don't think it'll probably kill him. Childhood epilepsy. We have no idea what's causing it, why it's happening, but you need to be really careful. Don't leave him in the bath by himself, and be careful at night. Like if he goes into a seizure, all these precautions, right? They put him on a medication called Keppra, and we leave. This medication is awful. It causes weight gain, angry outbursts. The list goes on and on and on. In the meanwhile, I am desperately trying to figure out what the hell happened to my kid. Why? What in the world is going on? Why is he so sick? So I start digging. And my sister has a friend who was one of those anti-vaxxers. And I don't know, I just start praying. I start digging into the medical literature. I love to research. So I start doing all this research, and it turns out that everything that happened to him absolutely is in the medical literature linked to vaccination, that they haven't been studied for 50 years, and that they're really very unsafe. So I was mind blown. I was angry for a really long time at the medical community. I'm not anymore. And so anyway, I talked to my sister's friend, and then I talked to some more people. And then I finally take my son to an integrative physician named Dr. Joy Whiteart. She no longer practices here because she wouldn't get all of her vaccine injured kids up to date. So she got kicked out of her own practice at KU. But she said this, and I loved her. She was very straightforward and to the point, Miss Whiteart. So we run all these tests on Braden to see what's going on. His gut was absolutely destroyed. So we had to rebuild his gut, but she was great. And then all she said was, he is not a good candidate for vaccination. But great. I was like, finally a doctor who was like, yeah, no, this kid should never get a vaccine again. And I was like, okay. So then I started seeking out somebody who could help me heal him. And I found First Choice Chiropractic, who has a wonderful vaccine injury recovery program. And we did that. And eventually so I think they would have kept him on that damn Keppra forever, but it was horrible. So we had a specialist that we used to go to at Children's Mercy, a neurologist. He was a lovely man, and we would go and see him, and he never had a seizure again after that, you guys. He's never had another seizure. So, which praise God, he's never had another one. And so finally, after 6 months of being on the Keppra, I told the doctor I'm taking him off of it. He's going to be fine. And he was a little bit like, "Oh, I don't think you should do that." I said, "Well, I am. I feel like it's the right thing to do." And then 6 months later, he still didn't have another seizure. So they said, "You're good." I guess he's healed. So weird, of benign childhood epilepsy. So yeah.
So then, would you share with us your story as well as your book, please? You shared your
Yes.
story, and that
My
led you
book.
to being a published, phenomenal author. That
Thank you.
I made sure to get your signature and autograph on my copy of the book.
Thank you so much. Yes. So in the middle of all this, I found a tribe of people on Facebook and in my community. And I love to write. And I'm always writing things on Facebook, um, about topics that a lot of people won't write about, but I don't care. I write about them. And this woman reached out to me and was like, "I love everything you have to say on Facebook, and I'm super interested in your child's story. And I think you're incredible. Would you want to be a co-author in a book with me and share your son's story and share about natural cures for vaccine preventable diseases?" Of course, I said yes. And I did that. And the book is called Naturally Inspired. And there are a number of authors in the book. And it's a beautiful collaboration. You guys, the book covers everything for your family's health, from 5G and frequency to vaccinations, right, to the food we eat, to lifestyle practices to keep your family healthy. So and I don't just say this because I wrote it, it really is it's a very good book. Or I helped write it. You can buy it on Amazon, just Naturally Inspired. It'll come up. And you can order it from Golden Brick Road Publishing House as well. So those are the two places you can get it. Yeah.
That's absolutely beautiful, and I honor you. So many of us have trauma, and we don't know what to do with it. A lot of us, myself included, hold it in as anger, uh, and
Yeah.
so for me, being diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer at age 40, as I turned 41 years old,
Mhm.
and 55% of it was emotional, that I didn't matter, and that was the root emotional cause
Yeah.
of it in my breast. And then my liver cancer was that I needed to vacuum clean from the world, and I had a lot of anger in me, and so it led me deeper into my holistic journey.
Yes, it did.
And so that is why I am inspired to share my story. But I do want to ask you then and segue into, one thing. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can read
Yeah.
this appropriately.
Go
is,
for it.
is Liz, in our work, you and I, as both success coaches and holistic educators,
Mhm.
we've both learned that many people don't realize, that they're holding on to these traumas as well as limiting beliefs.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, would you share with us, with me, how did you discover limiting beliefs, very specifically about food? Because you and I both share that we've lost over 200 pounds combined between the
Mhm.
both of us,
Right.
100 something for you, 100
Mhm.
something. I've lost track. It's a whole
I
human
know. I've
story.
lost track. And then there's these sometimes, and so yeah,
Yeah,
a
but the
lot.
bottom
We've
the,
lost a good sized person.
exactly, we have, or two. The two of us certainly could have been sizable as four. Uh,
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Oh my gosh.
and so you are, one of your biggest passions is not just nutrition for your own body temple, but it's also for your family. So would you share with me how you found out about those limiting beliefs for yourself about food?
I will. So surrounding food, I really don't think I understood that it was all about mindset, trauma, and limiting beliefs until I was an adult. I realized very young that I had some poor habits and that I had some generational things that were passed down about weight. I have obese people in my family. Um, but I just had no idea what the hell to do about it, really. I just would keep doing the same cycles. You find yourself repeating these cycles. And when you find yourself repeating these cycles, that's the magic right there, right? These cycles that you just keep repeating over and over again. Well, my cycle with food was lose a bunch of weight and really be hard on myself and strict with myself and follow the plan. Yes, yes, just you have to, oh, and it's hard and you have to work hard at it, right? And all these things. And then say, F that, I'm really tired of this. This is horrible. I can't live like this the rest of my life, and gorge and binge and gain all the weight back and then 10 pounds. Okay. So this is the cycle I find myself in. So as an adult, I think actually, and I did have a weight loss surgery years ago that did help me really it helped me lose that first 60 pounds. Then I found myself stuck again. And whew, after you spent money on weight loss surgery and you're still stuck. And that is when I really realized that, okay, I'm going to have to figure out what's going on here and what patterns and why I'm repeating these patterns and do some work. But then I really think when I started learning about energy healing and energy work and spending time in my own body, these things would come up for me. Right? I would have these thoughts that would come to my mind and I'm like, that's not true. Oh, Liz, you're never going to lose all this weight. It's so hard. It's so hard for you. Oh, you've tried so many times and failed. Oh, everybody in your family's fat. Oh, right, all these things. And so I had to figure out. So then it struck me. Okay, Liz, these are lies. These just aren't true, but what am I going to do about it?
So, in other words, you've discovered the basic premise that limiting beliefs and traumas
Mm-hmm.
are essentially lies that you tell yourself.
Yeah,
And what I've learned is those traumas create a holographic lie in either our brain or in our bodies.
yep,
That we have to then address those lies with ourselves
we
to
do.
begin to release them, correct?
That is exactly right. You guys know that you have cellular memories in your cell, not just of your traumas and your memories and lies you've told yourself, but of generations past. So you got yourself to deal with and their stuff to deal with, but you also have wonderful generational beauty and gifts. So, there are some negative things. So then I knew this, right? And I've learned all about cellular memory and how to heal trauma since then. But at the time, I didn't really know what to do except keep getting energy work done, get massage done. Then I realized during meditation sessions, I started meditating. I thought, well, maybe I need to spend a little more time with myself here and see, because I didn't like that. I am a manifesting generator. I move fast and I love people. I never
Yeah,
spent time being quiet.
you're prayerful and reflective. And
Yes.
so when we're taught that meditation is bad or being with ourselves, that's also a limiting belief that we have to work through or not. It's
That's
each person's
exactly right.
personal.
There was another layer of religious dogma that I have spent a lot of time moving through and dealing with. That is its own trauma. And it's, I'm just going to share this. Tamara was doing some energy work on me one day. And I shared with you, I don't know if you remember this. I was like, I think I'm going to go to hell. Am I going to go to hell? And Tamara was like, no, Liz, absolutely not. I have seen the light. But you are absolutely not going to go to hell for doing these things to help your body. But that's a lot of religious stuff to carry around.
It is. And I am not God. Let me
Yeah.
clarify for our audience, for myself,
No.
for the work that we do, is that I had a near death experience when I was 8, and it allowed me to see that heaven or hell is a little different than dogma teaches us from my viewpoint. And that is, if you've ever read anything by Don Miguel Ruiz, an amazing author who wrote The
So
Four
good.
Agreements, The Mastery of Love, all
Four
sorts.
agreements is so good.
Exactly. You will learn, according to his belief, that heaven or hell is based on our emotions right here, right now, in this lifetime. And my connection to God, I don't believe that God is a judgmental God. That is my belief. Your belief may be completely different.
Yeah.
And anybody else who's watching this, and I respect all paths.
Yeah.
The one path I don't really do so well with is atheism, just because to me it's so humbling to know that we have higher power, we have connection to God. So those
Yep.
are really the only people I don't tend to resonate with. Just a
I would agree with that. Yes.
So I do remember that very clearly. And I remember thinking to myself as a human being that you are not just on my table and I'm here to pour love into you. Your question was really essentially, am I going to hell because I'm taking care of myself? Is this selfish?
Oh, yeah.
And so let's just end our interview with that.
Yeah.
Liz, do
Mhm.
you think that self care is selfish as a mom to
Absolutely.
three?
Oh, no, it is integral to being able to live a healthy life and not pass more of this crap onto further generations. You know, it's so true.
The disclaimer, I'm sorry.
I cuss a little.
So I think that's really important. And let's just end, for this lesson between two very dear friends, two very dear associates, that I want each of you to know. I personally am a step parent to five, and their five spouses and partners means 10. And
Yeah.
then the children I've adopted spiritually on the planet is probably
Yes.
another 10. And then the grandchildren, who is about to be six. I haven't checked my phone, but so, and the 4,000 clients in our practice at Aloha Wellness, and my family, and I am a caregiver. I love to take care of people. I love to take care of our island. I love to take care of Lenexa. I love to take care of people. But the bottom line is that you may, if you're looking at the way that I choose to work out, the way that I choose to eat, the way that I choose to be gentle with myself, looking in on me, you may absolutely say Tamara is a selfish woman.
Mm,
But that is somebody else's viewpoint,
yeah.
because I do not think, and looking at you, Liz, and the way that you care for your absolutely stunning physical, emotional, and spiritual body, I see a woman who absolutely radical self care. You are such a gift
Oh
because
my
of
gosh.
what
Thank
you
you
do.
so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. A million times over. Thank you. And I think we're a reflection of each other
Well,
because that is absolutely true for you. I mean, you are such a light. And oh my gosh, you are so dear to my heart. And I just thank you
thank you.
for everything you do. Yeah, we've got to take care of ourselves. It's hard. You cannot give from an empty cup.
No,
Self
absolutely.
self-care is not selfish, and self-care doesn't mean going and being dramatic and crazy with your money. It really just means taking care of your body temple, as
That's right.
Tammy would say.
And honoring our net worth is a
Mhm.
huge component of that. We've learned that,
Yep, that's
honoring our net
exactly
worth,
right.
knowing our net worth. How powerful was that when we started that practice
Oh
together?
my gosh, so amazing.
And when it starts
Yep.
multiplying just because you're keeping track of it,
Yep. There's something to be said about actually knowing how much money you have and how much is going in and going out and letting it flow. Money's just energy too, right?
exactly,
Flows in and it
exactly,
flows out if you'll let it. Yeah.
exactly. And tithing and stewardship and all the other
Tithing has become very important to us.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly. Well, I'm sure we'll have many more fun times together. I honor you each because time is one thing you can't pay back.
Right.
And so each of you has been willing to spend time with each of us. And we honor you for that. I honor you, Liz, for taking time out of your busy schedule. And I'm so grateful. And I hope that everybody buys your book. Everybody comes to Aloha to get a massage
Yes.
or energy work, and that we just have tremendous fun. I miss being 2 miles away from you.
Oh my
I miss
gosh,
that
me
you're
too.
1,700 geographic miles away,
Yeah.
but it doesn't change the way I love you. So
Um,
thank you.
I love you too, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.